Let me tell you a story. So it's 2014. I was working for a big tech company as a senior product designer in Sydney. And honestly, while it took me many years and many different companies to get there, I actually really enjoyed my job and my career. It was challenging, stimulating, creative, and I worked with so many people who were way smarter than I was and way more talented than I was. And it was a big time of learning and growth for me. I got paid very well. I had a great work culture. I had some fun work friends, and life was good, man. I actually looked forward to going to work every day. And so a couple of years go by, and I'm still enjoying it. And at the same time, I also break up with my then longtime ex-girlfriend. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I find myself with a digital camera received from her, learning photography for real, for the first time. And I had owned, all these like old school flip phones with cameras on the back, and I owned some of the very first GoPros, and I even owned the very first iPhone in almost every single version since then. I've had cameras around me my entire life, but it wasn't until I was 26 or 27 or whatever it was that I actually first stopped to learn how to actually properly use one. And once I did, I never looked back, or at least I have still yet to do so. The first few years of trying to really master photography was such an electric time for me. I remember I would go out and shoot street after work every single day, all in the pursuit of trying to get better. I would read photography books and scour the internet for photography blogs, which I would read in whatever spare time I had during work. Reading about and getting better at and practicing photography consumed me completely. And even to this day, whenever I really get into something, I go all in. But during this time, I made a lot of, photography friends in Sydney. Some of these friends I consider to be my closest friends now, today. I went to a lot of events. I created and hosted a lot of photography events. I really embedded myself in the community, and it became my world. Photography at this stage in my life was fun, and I loved doing it. I felt compelled to do it, like as if it was my calling. My life felt empty without taking photos. And even though at the time my work wasn't great, I loved the process, and I saw myself and everyone around me getting better and better and better as time went on, and it was a truly magical time. So I'm doing all of this while I'm still working my full-time job, which I also enjoyed, and eventually I started to have some success on Instagram. Drones started to get popular, same with my drone shots, and same with my images just in total. Instagram featured me. I started winning awards, getting brand recognition, and sponsorships started to roll in. Money was starting to come in through this thing that I was doing in my spare time that I enjoyed so much. At the time, even though I loved my job, I had almost spent a decade of my life doing product design. And although this is a whole other story, the short of it was that I felt like it was time to move on. The money coming in from Instagram and other things that I had created at the time was enough for me to safely make the jump to start doing photography full time. And so in 2019, I did it. And the first year was amazing, as you could probably imagine. I traveled all over the world solo. I did a lot of personal work. I did a lot of campaigns. I did a lot of client work. And I had the energy and the signals to be confident enough to know that this thing was going to work. That I wasn't going to come back to product design with my tail between my legs, because all of this stuff, this new path, was working. Of course, then COVID hit, and as a travel photographer, not being able to travel means that you're no longer a travel photographer, but still, struggles aside, I was still enjoying the process and making things work. But from then, and even up until now, my feeling about photography and taking photos has shifted. The feeling of excitement and the buzz around a shot that I used to get when I was growing as a photographer and doing it for fun in my spare time, that buzz is no longer there. Or at least it's hard to come by nowadays. Now, that's not to say that I don't enjoy it and don't enjoy the process of taking photos. I absolutely still do. And I'm absolutely grateful and appreciative enough to stop and recognize that I have the best job in the world for me. But photography doesn't feel the same. And it's a funny thing. You spend all of this time, years, building and honing your skills in a craft that you enjoy, and you become really good at it. But a really important factor about the satisfaction in your craft that I've found over many years of doing it is that the direction that you use your craft in is really important. Over these past few years, I've made some really big life changes. I've stopped traveling the world so much, and instead I've moved to Japan. I started talking about photography and started to educate you guys here on this platform through YouTube. And yet I find myself now, more than ever, internally struggling with continually trying to reignite the passion for photography that I once had. Even though I'm more embedded in it than I've ever been, even though I've moved to the country that made me fall in love with it so much in the first place. Again, that's not to say that I don't do it regularly, I absolutely do, but I fight with myself so often to just get out there and do it for myself, with no business attachment, with no YouTube attachment, with no campaign, no brand, no any other thing attached to the act of doing it. I feel like every shoot that I do now has some kind of commercial slant to it, whether that's social media or sponsorships or educational videos or even just vlogs, whatever it is, there's always some kind of agenda. And it's something that I'm constantly battling with ever since I went full-time almost 6 years ago. I go through these cycles of trying to reignite my passion and then finding it, but then slowly losing it again and then trying to reignite it again. I go through this cycle many, many times a year, honestly. I try new things all of the time in search of something that is sustainable, trying out film, getting new gear, going and trying things in different countries, different photographic techniques, doing challenges, all that kind of stuff. But I've come to realize that the cyclic nature of falling in and out of love with it is the journey itself. And that the journey only ever truly stops once the cycles stop. This is the tax that I pay for having photography in my life with this kind of relationship to it. Photography for me is a job. It's a job that I am absolutely blessed and grateful for, yes, but my relationship to it has completely changed to how it was in those first few years. Now, my life revolves around getting my job done and executed well, of course, but then also looking for avenues outside of photography, outside of my job to escape from it, which is why I have so many damn hobbies. Anecdotally, some semblance of this experience is also the experience of other full-time photographers doing it for many years as well, or at least the ones that I've talked to. After a while, your relationship to the craft changes and you start to look towards other things in your life to fill that void. I look for novel travel experiences. I try to experience growth in other areas of my life on things I'm working on. I try to find friends, yes, that are creators, but more importantly, also ones that aren't. This is what happens when the hobby that you love doing so much goes pro. The hobby transcends into a job by definition, which means that eventually you'll probably end up looking for another hobby. Now, I tell you all of this because I've met and fielded the questions of hundreds, thousands of you would-be full-time photographers who absolutely adore photography and love it as it is, in the state that it is in your life right now, but want to take it to the next level. And it is for you that I asked the question, is it worth changing the relationship you have to it? Because your story and your experience, while it won't be exactly the same as mine, it will have some kind of semblance and variation to it. And if you are in the fortunate position to be asking yourself if you want to take it full time, you also have to be okay with everything that comes along with it. You know, to do it when you don't feel like doing it, to create when you feel uninspired, to not know where your next paycheck is going to come in from, to wear all of the hats of a small business owner and do things that you don't feel like doing just to make money. Is it worth it? For me, of course, it is, which is why I'm here talking to you right now. You know, I've traveled the world. I've made lifelong friends. I've had experiences that I would have never had without doing photography full time. You know, I have a well-paying career because of it. So I am happy with the trade-off, but it is a trade-off. And it's okay to say no to falling out of love with something that you've worked so hard to fall in love with in the first place. It's okay to keep photography right where it is. Let me know your experiences and where you keep photography in your life in the comments below, and I hope this video helped or at least sparked some questions for you. Keep getting out there and making something that matters to you or to the world, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.